It's March 11th, 2010, and this is The Bad Catholic. So, I picked up this week's issue of the Argus. Scanning through the so-called Lakehead University student newspaper, I came across this incredible bit of idiocy. Now, granted, there's quite a bit of idiocy already on campus, but this stupidity is so exquisite in its formation that it passed through the bowels of political correctness, refined to an unparalleled level of misandry and totalitarian doublethink. But hey, you know what? It shouldn't really surprise any of us because, well, it's written for and by feminists. The article is paradoxically titled, "Losing Status of Women in Canada, Gender Issues Center Marks 99th International Celebration of Women." Well, la-ti-da, let's just all stop and celebrate your particular gynecological accident of birth, shall we? Well, now that we are all sure that you feel good about your vagina, we can all move on. And by the way, before we start getting any further, don't bother questioning the logic of a group that's supposedly losing status, getting a full week of celebration and accompanying activities. But really, that's not really what irritated me in this whole thing, because that's the usual narcissistic, brain-dead, self-esteem-driven idiocy that these people promote all the time. What really pissed me off is what follows in the article. I quote, "Gender Issues Center Coordinator Dave Ivani says that over the last 3 years, Status of Women Canada has recycled notions tying women's strength to national and international strength." Okay, recycling notions? What the hell does that even mean? To some, that sounds a lot like intellectual stagnation. And to the majority of others, it sounds like an exercise in self-esteem masturbation. But you know what? What the hell, right? Everybody has the right to assemble and share their ideas equally in our society, right? Well, my friends, not if your accident of birth happens to be a penis, because this article continues. Quote, "The International Women's Week kicked off last week with a series of events." But remember, everyone, they're losing status. "The Gender Issues Center participated in a social work fair. As well, there was a women's only night in the Gender Issues Center, which provided a women's only space on campus where women could come together and share their concerns for women's rights issues." Oh, okay. You were talking about these same issues that you guys have been vomiting up and swallowing again for the last 3 years because there's been no public demand or need for them whatsoever. I'm just checking. But seriously now, WTF? A women's only night on campus to share their concerns? Where the hell do these people think they are? Saudi Arabia? We're living in post-feminist Canada. Would we put up with this BS if the Gender Issues Center hosted an event where a prerequisite for participation and attendance was whites only? I don't think so. And you know what? We really have to ask ourselves, what are these people saying that it actually has to only be said in private? Now, call me crazy, but I was under the impression all events related to Lakehead University Student Union were to be inclusive. At least that's what Lusu said when they broke the Constitution to suppress the pro-life club several months ago. And as I recall, this same group of feminists didn't seem to have a problem descending en masse to share their concerns about women's rights issues while at the same time suppressing those of the pro-life group. But wait a minute, these same rules don't apply to feminists, right? I mean, because they're so oppressed, they get a privileged double standard, don't they? I mean, 1 minute, and in the same article, this group is supposedly so powerful that they're joining their strength to create some sort of grand army of feminist might, and yet at the same time, in the same article, they're so delicate that they have to cocoon themselves in an intellectually sterile environment because, what? Us nasty men are gonna, what? Offend them and perhaps hurt their feelings, I don't know. And when exactly do we know when these feminists are strong and when they're weak? Well, I'll tell you, when they bloody well tell us they are. Because we're supposed to just unquestionably agree with everything and anything these morons say, regardless of experience or fact or evidence. And why is that exactly? Well, we all know from experience that on the Lakehead University campus, we men just actively rape and beat any woman that bothers raising any concerns publicly whatsoever. Now, I can only speak for myself on this particular point, but I see this as a little more offensive to women than it is to men, but I've been told that I don't think highly of women. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but don't we have that academic joke that's known as the Women's Studies Department to express and defend these concerns? Perhaps we need to review the use of such an enterprise if they are so blatantly incompetent that they can't seem to get the job done after, what, 25 years? And besides, clearly, we all know that there's no other feminists in positions of authority or power to represent this group. I mean, there's not a one in the history department or the English department or the administration for that matter. There is no one to express these women's issues that are so worthy of a clandestine, subterranean Politburo meeting. But most importantly, I want to know why the Gender Issues Center, that is funded by Lusu, which is also funded by me under duress, by the way, has this particular double standard. By their actions in condoning the bigoted and offense to be free speech and inclusion. What is Lusu saying about the male demographic of their membership anyway? Clearly, Lusu sees men as too evil and violent to be given the opportunity to contribute to any discussion on women's issues, or maybe even defend ourselves intellectually from misrepresentation. No, we men cannot be trusted to act in a civilized manner in a public discourse, can we? Or is it that feminists, like cockroaches, cannot stand to bear the light of free inquiry and criticism? But honestly, what's really still nagging at me? What is being said in that room that can't be heard by the rest of us? No, silly me. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? Women's issues and men's issues never intersect at any point, at any time, obviously. Now, granted, I'm already disgusted with Lusu over the attempted suppression of free speech with the pro-life club. But let's face it, this exercise in ideologically driven privilege is just another example of Lusu's blatant disregard for any interest in diversity of ideas on campus. Now, this used to be called freedom, but you may not recognize it by that name anymore because it's been co-opted by the feminists. Yeah, that's right, kids. Diversity does not end with the color of your skin or who or what you screw. It's the open marketplace of ideas and criticism that make up true diversity on a university campus. Any group that cannot survive in this environment is either not intellectually rigorous enough to bear scrutiny, or it's not interested in the freedom of ideas at all. I think you can all judge for yourself if this is an either or both and scenario. To sum up, I think the students of Lakehead University specifically males, are entitled to a public apology from both the Gender Issues Center and Lusu. As well, I propose a review of Lusu's standards of so-called inclusion, because this is just too damn repugnant to let slide. And this double standard is clearly more than an isolated incident, and must be addressed not just for the male students, but for all groups who have the right to be heard in all discourses on the university campus. This has been the Bad Catholic, because, hell, somebody's got to say it. Ave Maria.